It is now time to elevate.
Time to motivate.
Let's engage. It is now time to elevate.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Engage, Motivate, and Elevate with Monet Fox. We have a super great show for you today. My girl, Stephanie Everett, is going to be joining us. She's an attorney. She's running for state representative out of Massachusetts. So she's a candidate for that. She's a mom. She's a wife. She has 9 children that she's helping to raise. So this is going to be a super great show, not just about family, but about how we can protect our children legally. Also, some things that she's doing on the state level to support the community in ways that you can get involved too. So make sure you stay tuned in. Stephanie Everett. Thanks so much for joining us, Stephanie. Everyone, welcome Stephanie Everett.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. I'm super excited to talk to you. So for those of you that don't know, Stephanie and I have known each other since we were adolescents, probably younger than teenagers even. You know, we grew up around the same neighborhood, so I've known her for a really long time. I'm super excited to get to talk to you. And we're going to jump right in, Steph, because I think it's really important for our community, especially our young Black boys, to understand you're an attorney. You know, and what kind of law do you practice? Let's start at the beginning of that.
Well, I do criminal law and real estate law. I stay in 2 lanes. That's it.
Right. It's 2 different things. But real estate law is important for me later. We could talk about that later. But with the criminal stuff, I want you with this Black Lives Matter campaign going on, and you understanding from a legal perspective some of the things that have been happening to some kids, whether they're getting arrested for protesting or just have been victims of part of this whole movement where they were, treated in a foul way by the police. Can you talk to us about the rights that some of these boys have? Like, what should our parents be telling young Black boys in terms of preparation for when they come into touch with the police?
Give your name only, right? Like, I think that's the biggest thing. So when this happened, let me just go back and try to answer all of this at one time. As a mom, we have a blended family. My husband and I have 9 children. So he came in with 3, I came in with 2. We had 3 together, and then we have a foster son. So we have 4 boys, 5 girls. When my oldest boy came to live with us from Georgia, I remember being extremely tired and picking him up every day. When he was at football practice or a football game, at the end, they still had to ride home with their friends. And my husband would be like, "Why are you picking him up?" And it's like, because it's 10:30. I don't want him on the train. I don't know what's going to happen. So while I'm tired, I don't want it. I can't sleep. I'm not going to sleep. And if something happens, then what? I'm going to say I was too tired to go pick up my son. Right. So those are the things that where some parents would be like, "Oh, there's a group of them that are getting home on their own." For Black families, we worry not just about gang activity, we worry about interactions with the police. So I have one biological son who's 13. So I had a conversation with him probably 2 years ago about how he used to interact with the police. And these are conversations that we have on a regular basis. And for him, because his mother's an attorney, you give your name and you just keep saying, "My mom's an attorney. Her name's Stephanie Everett. This is her number. Call her." That's all you do. But at the same time, it's do not put your hands in your pocket. Do not look away from them. Do not, if your head's itching, it's just going to itch. If your leg is itching, it's just going to itch. Do not scratch any part of your body. Do not move positions, right? It's really the instructions that we as parents give our sons are really what we need you to come home. It's just, I want you to come home. It is not anything that's written anywhere. It's all the things that we know if you do, it's more than likely than not that you're going to come home, but not guaranteed.
Right. And this is unfortunately a harsh reality for the urban community. I was talking to one of my cousins. He's out in DC, but he was talking to me about, when they have run-ins with the police. He does some mentoring too. And he was saying that they teach the boys to give them to humanize themselves as quickly as they can. My name is such and such, I'm coming from the park playing basketball with my friends, so, kind of tell hey, I'm just a regular kid playing, I'm not a threat. I'm not somebody that's going to harm you. Please be aware, I was going to call my mom so she can come get me. My mom wants me home by a certain time. It's kind of talking to them in a sense that makes them feel like, oh, this is a kid. He's calling his mother, he's playing with his friends, kind of saying those things that unfortunately we shouldn't have think about. But this is the way that, most Black parents, we do have to prepare our children in this way.
Yeah, so that's why I tell them to say, my mom is an attorney.
That's right.
It's just my mom's an attorney. Her name's Stephanie Everett. My name, so that there is like this continuum of my mom. The more questions they ask my mom. As a criminal law attorney, I think that's all I want you to say. I don't even want you to tell me you're coming from the park, right? Yeah. Like, I don't want you to give, there is this funny way, police can lie to you. There's nothing that prevents police from lying to you. It's not it's not illegal for them to do it because their goal is to investigate a crime or potential crime. And so that everything that they're asking you is to prove or disprove that you are part of a crime or are going to be part of a crime, right? So if you think about when you're interacting with the police, what is their reasoning for talking to you? Is it because there's a crime that has already been committed and they're trying to see if I fall into that? So if you say I was at the park and the crime happened around the corner from the park, you kind of put yourself in the area, right?
Yeah. So it's not good to say that. It's better to just give your name.
Your name. And just keep my mom, my dad, right? And it is really humanizing you because you don't want the police to start putting stuff in. The police.
So for those of us that don't have law degrees, what do we tell our kids? Just like my mom is waiting for me, or what would you recommend?
I would say yes. Can you call my mom? Remind them, especially for our young boys who, like my 13-year-old. If you follow me on social media, I've been kind of fighting with the fact that he's getting taller, right? And we're taking pictures almost every month to see when he's taller than me. I'm just realizing his voice is changing. So for him, while it's in my mind, I'm he's going to be my baby for life, right? It's the only boy I've given birth to. This is it for me. Yeah. And then at the flip side of that is that he may sound older. He may appear older as time goes on. So if you really remind them, like you were saying your friend does in DC, that they're a child, right? So we want them to know that they're a child. And as a child, you have separate rights than you do. You have more protection as a juvenile than you do as an adult, right? Yeah. So saying my mom, maybe if, while they're waiting to verify stuff, you can say a little bit, you could say where you go to school at, that's not going to change anything, right? My son goes to Rocks Prep, Lucy Stone, which if you're a cop in the neighborhood knows it only goes up to 8th grade. So we're really dealing with a young kid. But I've seen some of my son's friends who are almost 6 feet tall right now, and they're only going into the 8th grade. So they may be perceived as different. It's no one way of trying to get home, right? So it's all the ways. My name is, can you call my mom? I was just coming, I was hanging with my friends from, Roxbury Prep, Lucy Stone, middle school. He wants his mom. This kid is underneath 15 years old, right? Those things are things that you can do that lets them know who you are. But then it's the other thing, don't run. Even though Commonwealth v. Warren in Massachusetts says that a Black man or Black and brown man running from the police is not indicative that they are actually guilty of a crime, the history of Black and brown with the police makes it so these people don't feel safe to stay, right?
That's right.
So we do have case law in Massachusetts that doesn't make the act of running away prove that you say that you're guilty. Okay. There's a justifiable reason for it. We as parents and as community have to figure out how we deal with this in our own household, what we say to our sons to really keep them being kids, right? We have to, mommy. You could say my mommy. You could things that are a little bit younger than, they get 14 and you're mom. You're not, or mom. You're not mommy, right? But you may want to, when they talk to the police, you want to be mommy. My dad. But, there's also the stereotype. You say my dad, well, what's your dad's name, right? Because, if they know your dad has a history, you must have a history. You're following dad. So there's a lot of things that you can do. But, it's really the conversation piece. It is around, I'm coming from my school. This is the name of the school, especially if it's a middle school and they just look older. Can you call my mom? Mom's an attorney, or my mom works at this place, or my dad works at this place. Boston itself is so small. I was just telling someone I told you I was out doing lit drops, and we were Boston is literally 1 degree of separation. You really don't need to call 6 people to find out who someone is. If you have to call 6 or 7 people to find out who someone is, they're not really centered.
Connected.
They may have lived here, but they went to school elsewhere. They may have went to, high school. But Monet, and I know, like, we would be in Mattapan Square. We would be in Dudley. Like, there are, it's just one. You just have to call someone. Well, they say they're from Dudley. Well, let me call such and such because she's lived there her whole life. And you can figure out who that person is. So the same is true of police officers. They know if you say, like, my husband works for Eversource, they know people who work for Eversource, right? Like, so it starts to make it like, oh, they must come from a good household, whatever that means for them. But these are the things that we want them to do. It does not mean that you are being a punk.
Right.
It's okay. First of all, we should normalize being scared. Like, especially young boys. We should embrace that they have emotions. Being scared as a Black woman, Black man is no different than a young girl or a young boy. And we should be honest about that. We should all be honest that when police come behind us with sirens, we don't know if they're pulling us over or trying to get around us. But in that second that we hear it, all of our hearts drop. Whether you're legit or not, your heart stops. It's like, oh my God. It's being on a roller coaster, and you pull over with the hope that they are not following you. They're not pulling you over. You can have no lights on in your car. Your registration could be good. Your license could be good. But just the thought that they're pulling you over makes it so that you stop for a second. So imagine if you're a young kid. So we should embrace that. If we feel that as an adult, we shouldn't tell our sons and our daughters they shouldn't feel that. They both should feel it.
That's right.
It's serious. And then, it's okay. Say I'm scared. Own it. Come home and let's talk about it, but come home. Yeah. Whatever it has to do, just come home.
The goal is get home and get home safe. So one thing I want to talk about, because you're a mom, you have a very different, intimate perspective around keeping your children safe. But from an attorney's perspective, like what you see in the courtroom, when you're defending people, I don't know. I don't know what my question is. Like, how frustrating it is to see kids that are not aware or prepared, or how frustrating does your job become when you see just the level of ignorance, right? Because I told you I wanted you on here so much because I feel like there's so much ignorance around the law, like how people should be protecting themselves. So when you're defending somebody that has failed to protect themselves over what some others may feel like is obvious mistakes, what role do you take? Do you take kind of like the parent role? Or are you straight lawyer kind of? How do you? Okay,
now
go ahead. I saw your face already, so I know it's coming. But go ahead, you tell me.
I'm a bar advocate out in Norfolk County, so I do take cases that for people who can't afford attorneys. I do private cases, but majority of my criminal law, I'm a bar advocate. If you can't afford an attorney, you pay the court $150, sometimes $300, and I represent you. In that situation, I have found that on my business cards that used to always say attorney/counselor. I don't know if I still kept the counselor. The truth is that you counsel more than you attorney, right? Okay. So when I'm in front of the judge, it is humanizing them. It is saying if someone has a substance abuse issue and that caused them to break into a house, you putting them in jail is not going to help this issue, right? The goal in the criminal justice system, and I think as attorneys, this is our job, is to remind everyone in that courtroom what this system was created for. It was not created to punish. It was actually created to rehabilitate. Well, excuse me, it was created to punish. We changed it to rehabilitation. So it's supposedly still stuck on rehabilitation, but we haven't really executed it that way. So if you put a lot of people in jail who have substance abuse issues, you're not really treating the problem, right? Like you're just treating the one situation. And so when they come out, they go back to that situation. So for my clients, I always want to know who they are. I want to know, what do you do for a living? Who do you live with? If you live with a step parent, what's your relationship with them? What is your relationship with this person? I have a client who I love to pieces. He's a private client, but he's young. But his rap sheet is almost as old as him. So I went to his jail, like to visit him in jail. And I was like, I brought it, threw it on the table. And I said, someone didn't tell you this before, but let me help you. He's from around our way. And I said, you're not a good criminal. Someone should have told you this. Because every time you do something, you clearly get caught, right? But what it does tell me is that you are persistent. You don't give up. You're still trying to figure out how I can better what I'm doing. So why can't we, now it's like, what do you want to do? So I can spend an hour conversation at a jail visit or in my office talking to someone 20 minutes about their case, but 40 minutes trying to figure out who they are, where they want to be, and what resources I have available to help them get there. Or just identifying things, right? Like for that person, it's like your hustle is unsurpassed because you haven't given up. So this is a moment, right? Like I think as an attorney, I tell this to my clients all the time. This does not define you. It's a moment of your life. We've all had these horrible moments in our lives. I don't believe in regrets. I look at the moments. There's some that are positive, some are negative. But what are you going to learn from everything, right? If you have a positive moment, you still should be learning something from that. So a lot of it is letting people know, I want to see who you are. Because they've been in the system so long. They've had attorneys, unfortunately, that were just like, what do you do for a living? Do you have money to pay this? Do you have any, like it's very robot.
Yeah, and also what you do by asking them or trying to figure out who they are is really give them a sense of belonging and a sense of, for someone that's, I'm not a criminal, so I'm not in their minds, but I would think that someone that was like a petty thief, right? Just kind of going through like small things, not violent, but you continue to do it and you say, okay, there's consistency or persistence with that. There's also like, in my mind, I feel like there's also like cries for help. Maybe he's broke. Maybe he doesn't have food. Maybe he got other things, so I'm thinking like a whole lot of other things in my mind, going on in his life, not just like, oh, he's out here stealing. Like, I talk to my friends a lot, especially that we grew up in around our age group and stuff. And I say, back then, people that like stole or like sticker kids or, people that was, had titles in the street, most of the time their households, and we were too ashamed to say it at the time, most of the time their household were either single parent or one of the parents was on drugs or, they was very impoverished or poor, like, and so we can talk about that now as adults and say, that dude had to do that thing. But back then when we're younger, we're just saying like, oh, that dude want to steal and he want to rob and he want to, we kind of criticize that. Not to say that anyone should resort to that, but there's a different level of understanding where there's a need, where there's like, you're living in poverty and you have children and you can't get a job because you have a record and there's no Corey reform. And there's like this domino effect of digression in your life every time you're trying to move forward. So I think
there's a give up. There is a give up, right? Yeah. So, I remember in my own household, my father spent 90% of my life in jail. You've never met my biological dad, right, as long as we've known each other. He was here. He's from Georgia, lived in Georgia his whole life. He did a couple of years in Ohio, and my grandfather was passing. I don't even know why my grandfather was in Ohio. I don't remember him either. My stepfather had his own issues, the demons he was battling with. My mother has mental health issues. So you saw me all the time, but there's like, I had 4 other siblings that you didn't see either, right? Like it was like escaping. And what people would say is like, you're the black sheep of the family. No, I didn't have a proper outlet, right? So I would call the elephant in the room that everybody else was like, we don't talk about it. And that's one of the things in black families. It's like, we keep it in here. But if you have a personality like where it's, what Oprah calls that thing in your stomach, your intuition is telling you something's wrong. That was real with me when I was a young girl, where it was like, something is not right here. I don't know what it is. And I can't talk to anyone, but I can talk to everyone around the way because they understood. And without ever saying, I'm going through it at home. It was, it was kind of like, we got you. We understand what you're going through. And so from that, you will get, when I talk to my clients, especially my clients who are black and brown, they appreciate that because it's not like, they're like, oh, you're an attorney. And I was like, yes, but I'm from Mattapan. Like, born and raised, this is me. And they think of me like, oh, you must have went to school outside of the city. You must have had like this great family life. But like, we put it in our head, right? Like, for you to be successful, your background had to be successful. Your background had to be solid. That's not true. I just wanted to be better than what I came from. And so giving people an example of, it's, it's messed up if your household's not together. It's messed up if there's not support there. But we got you. What do you want? What do you need? And I don't care if you're 50 years old. If you wanted to go to law school, then let's get you to law school. If, we have to, one, let people be emotional without judgment. That's a big deal.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Emotion. So if we're not allowing that, we end up in a situation. When you see
men even less, men are allowed to show emotion even less than women. I mean, we are built to be very strong. I notice with women, and I don't know if you're this way, Steph, but I know with strong women, when I do have an issue, I always hear before any other level of support, it's always, you'll be all right, you're strong. Before any other thing. Now people that know me well enough will think enough to say, okay, what can I, they'll say a little bit more. But most people like, you're strong, girl. You got it. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm hurting. Like, I'm telling you, so regardless of my strength, I need to lean on something, like even if I'm strong, like I still need to lean right now. And I think that with men, they catch that even worse. I have my little twin cousins over here every now and again. They're 5 years old, right? And it's a boy and a girl. And the little boy told me the last time he was here, I can't cry because I'm a big boy. And, I'm sure his mom told him that, or his dad or something. And I feel bad because I hate people to come in and correct my child. But I told him, I said, it is absolutely okay for you to cry if you're hurt. I said, it is absolutely okay. I was like, you're not a baby if you get hurt and you cry. I said, that's okay. I said, now it's not okay to just cry for no reason or to try to get something. I said, but if you're hurt, it's okay. And I think that we kind of give this imagery to our men, and I say we because I'm talking about Black women and our men, Black men. We give this imagery to them that they can't be vulnerable, that they can't be afraid, that they can't be scared. And then when we want them to experience those feelings with us on an intimate level, we wonder why they can't give it to us. Because on every other front, we tell them not to. Don't do that. You better be tough. You better be strong. But with me, be soft and be intimate and be this. And it's like, I can't be both, girl.
You know what it is? It's a hard thing. So I definitely grew up very hard because of everything that was going on. So with my children, the one thing I hate to do is see them cry.
I can't hear you. Your sound.
Oh, is this better? Is this better? Can you hear me? Hello?
We'll just start over then.
So with my sons, it was hard for me to understand that they could cry. But with my girls, like all my kids, I'm not big on crying. I'm not a crier myself.
Yeah.
So as I got older, when I was younger, it was like, I don't want to hear you cry. Not one peep, get over it, right? I'm still like that in a sense where it's now like, go in your room, get it out. When you're done, come talk to me, right? Like I had to learn to let them do that. Because if I cut it off, I'm telling them that their emotions don't matter. And they do matter. I just can't talk through cries. I don't know what you're saying. And I had to, as a parent, learn to do that. I had to learn that I need to let them have that emotion, bring them back. Your tears aren't going to solve anything. That's what I tell my kids. Your tears don't solve anything. But if you're able to talk to me, then if you're hurt, obviously, if you fell down or something, you cry as much as you want. But if you're crying out of frustration, and my son did that a lot, like school was a frustrating point for him. And so he would just cry. I'm like, I just went through this. Do you understand it? Yep, I understand it. And you could see he didn't really understand it. And then he started crying. And with him, I think my 13-year-old boy is the one who made me like start to switch. Like, I can't yell at him for not doing something, and I can't yell at him for crying because I do want him to have emotion. I do want him to be available for whoever he chooses in his life. I do want him to feel like I can be vulnerable with you because my mother has taught me to be vulnerable in life, right? And at the same time, figure out how to protect myself. So those things are, they're a hard balance, but we do have to do it. And for my clients, it's worse because my clients are really based on a lot of the younger ones, social media driven. It's not even neighborhood specific. It's not gang specific. It's on our media. We have really propelled men and women who were drug dealers. Like I love me some Jay-Z. So if you're someone who has like a Jay-Z mentality, and it's like, Jay-Z is a perfect example of someone who had a strong business acumen, and acumen, and then took that and look where he's at, right? So he went from hustling on the street, figuring out how he could take a gift that he had naturally and make himself a billionaire. That's kind of how I look at my clients. And I think that's what they're thinking. Like, I have this gift, don't know how to use it, but Jay-Z did this, 50 Cent did this, right? And so, because the newer rappers really haven't experienced, not all of them, but a lot of them have not experienced the Jay-Z, 50 Cent.
Yeah, that level of success. Yeah, not that level.
Because they didn't have the crack epidemic, right? Mm-hmm. So those who weren't part of the crack epidemic have no idea what our families went through, right? It was, right now there's the heroin and opioid issue going on, but really having this hard, not to say that families don't have hard times, but this was like out in public. Your parents were doing the unthinkable. And so that
the late 90s, man, it was bad here in the city.
South End did not look like South End now. South End then versus South End now. It's always Hampton, Northampton, like that was, no one was flying in there to spend $2, $3, $4 million on a studio. Like, they just weren't doing that. Right. They were selling blocks for that much just to get out of there because it was so bad. But I say that to say, like, those are the foundations that we have in our system. Like, there's not anyone from the 80s or 90s that did not have a family member touched by the crack epidemic, right?
That's right.
And so that hunger, literal hunger of not having food, not having a lot, having to be latchkey kids at a young age, really having parents. It wasn't uncommon for you not to see your parent all day and all night, right? Like, there was things that you had to raise yourself. And as time went on, we realized how, like, our generation was like, that was wrong. So we're going to be like hovering parents. We don't want you doing anything.
It's crazy that you're saying that because, I think about the difference in even like what you were saying about your son, and you already know my son, he'll be 13. So our son's about the same age. And there's no place I don't drive him. Like, he's not even on public transportation by himself yet. Like, just because it's just me and him. So it's like, no, I'll take you. Oh, you want to go? Oh, no, I'll bring you. And it's not even a big deal. When I was his age, my mom worked 2 jobs. My brother would bring me back and forth to school. I wouldn't even see, my brother would like make a bowl of cereal for me in the morning on the way to school. Then coming home, my neighbor would watch us. So what you're saying, like not seeing your parents, being kind of like these latchkey kids, having to be raised by the community. That's what, that's just what it was because that's what it had to be. There were a lot of people, like you said, every family was affected by drugs. So there was a lot of people that I think at that time kind of stepped up that's why we have all these aunts and uncles now, because they kind of stepped in and said, oh, this is what's going on in your house. Let me make sure you get something to eat. Let me make sure you guys are getting to school. Let me make sure this is happening. So you had all these community aunties, kind of stepping up and saying, I'm going to make sure they're good. I'm going to make sure they're getting to school, or even uncles, I'm going to make sure doing mentorships and making sure that, guys were getting involved in sports and, these other types of activities and things like that. I can't imagine a household of 9 though, man, as the head female in it too.
What's funny is that at some point when I was young, I was like, I remember saying I want a full dining room and that every seat taken by a child, right? Like a big dining room. I luckily did not have to have all of the children in order to do that. But my kids are like fantastic. They're between 31 and 7. So it's not like they're on top of each other, but they actually, when you have younger kids and older kids, you actually have to teach the older ones how to parent the younger ones, because the older ones are like, I know mom's going to tell you no, but just I'll slide you.
Yeah, I got you.
I told them no for a reason. So you can't and so that, I think that's my biggest concern is that
because they want to be the cool sibling,
But they also
sometimes even as a parent, you got to give them that too. You got to let. Okay.
Because I'm like, I get what you're doing, but they're going to be adults one day, and they're going to think, if you don't give it to me, they're going to give it to me, right? So I want them to also try to do it themselves. So I think when the younger ones don't really have to do much. I'm at a different level in life. I had my first one at 19, right? So the younger ones are actually experiencing the fruits of mommy's labor, going to school at night, all day. But the older ones had to go through the struggle with me. So I'm like, they're not hurting. They don't need another pair of sneakers. I promise you, there's another that they have. But it's like, no, but these new ones came out, or they want to go here. So I'm just going to let them do this. My 13-year-old son is like decked all the time. And it's not mommy and daddy. It's like, I have all these siblings, and he's the youngest biological boy. So when he came, because he was my first boy, all the siblings were excited. Like, finally, we have a boy. And there was only 2 boys. So they were like, he's ours. And like, there's nothing. He wanted to go out to dinner with some girl the other day. And I was like, no. All of his older sisters were like, no, we're not doing that. But my oldest son is, you got to let him breathe, mommy. And so the thing about taking the bus, I felt the same way. So I prep Lucy Stone. They're right in Common Square where I'm in Lower Mills.
Okay.
I thought that the yellow school bus stopped for them this coming year. I didn't realize it stopped in the 7th grade. And I didn't realize that because my 2 girls, previous to him, went to O'Brien and BLA. Mm-hmm. School bus was still for them for the 7th and 8th grade. And they had to start taking the T in the 9th. But there was a group of them, so they weren't alone, so they could just go together. But for him, it was like, you want him to get on the T? So I was doing that run. So every morning, I would get up. My 7-year-old son, his door-to-door. His bus would come pick him up. We get in the car with my then 12, drop him off at school. He gets out of school at 3:45. I'd be there to picking him up. And then on Fridays, he gets out at 12. I have a business. I can't be there all the time. But I was like, no, I just got to be at a school. And it was coming a lot. And then I had to think about it. I know you because we figured out Boston. Yeah. And so the safety concern I had with my son was, one, I want him to know how to get on the train. I want him the trolley and the bus. Like, how do you get home? The basic thing of getting home without the parent was real. But then more importantly, the more times that you are in contact with people from other neighborhoods, the less likely if something happens that it's going to happen to your son, right? Because it'll be like, that's Chris. He's cool. I know him from such and such. So I had to start letting him go, which was very hard for my husband, who with my oldest son was like, let that boy get on the bus. But with the youngest one, he's like, no, we're going to go pick him up. Like, no matter what's going on, we're going to go pick him up. But with the little one, for this, I was like, we have to let him go. The other day, so we're in Lower Mills, like off of River Street. He rode his bike from our house to Franklin Hill. And I didn't tell my husband until my husband got home. So my husband, it's just down Morton Street, you take a ride up to, Harvard. My husband, he comes home. My husband comes home. My son, I gave him 4 o'clock time to get back. He comes in and he had fell and bust his knee. So my husband's like, you let him ride his bike up there? And I was like, I absolutely did. You know how many people he's going to meet riding from our house to Morton Street to Franklin Hill? So when it get hectic, when he is older, he's going into 8th grade. Hectic is coming. Hectic is not like 10 years away. Hectic is high school, and I don't know where he'll be at in high school. But I'd rather someone say, oh, that's Chris. He's cool. He hangs with such and such in Franklin Hill, or he's friends with such and such in Franklin Field. He hangs out in Dudley. That's who we play ball with at Orchard Gardens. Like, I have to purposely put him in all parts of Boston so that he purposely is cool Chris. Right? Yeah. So, like, you want your kid to be protected. Not all families understand what that means, right? Like, so there's the police action, and then there's the youth violence action that you have to deal with every day, right? Yeah. Like, no, I need my son to be everywhere. I want everyone to know him.
I mean, thinking ahead like that, I think that it's something that we all should be doing for our kids, especially boys. I mean, girls too. I mean, we definitely need to, but it's different. I don't have a girl, so I don't know, but I would imagine that with girls, we just have to plan a little bit differently with dealing with boys and, making sure that we stay safe and that we're respecting ourselves out in the streets. But with boys, there's so much, there's the racism and there's the gang violence and there's, getting caught up with your own. And that's the tricky thing about boys, right? Giving them the sense of themselves where they can feel strong enough to be leaders, not having to necessarily follow a crowd, but also being caring enough to kind of be cool with people that are going the wrong way. So, I look at my son like he's like that charming in-between person, right? He's not like street thug, but he's not like straight square either. So he's kind of like, he's everyone's friend, right? Everybody wants to be cool with him. So I tell him all the time, like, you're charming enough that you don't necessarily have to fight. You can talk yourself out of it. And people, like, he knows how to protect himself. When he sees violence or aggression, he's smart enough to say, okay, my time here is gone. It's done now. So I'm out, and he'll just walk away from it. And or if it's his friend, he'll sit there and he'll say, hey, we got to leave, or, so I see these little traits in him coming up, but it's also because I'm mindful, right? Like, you give your son or your child these jewels because you know where you came from. You know what it was like for you growing up and how tough it was. And even though you're a female, when we grew up, because we are the kind of girls that we are, we could protect even guys back then, sometimes, like we could get in the middle of the situation, like, wait, whoa, and so I understand what you're talking about when you say that, like, hey, no, he's cool, like, he's all right. I feel like I probably saved a couple of people in my life, being that were cool like that, or that had that kind of, reputation and things like that. So I think that that's super smart, and you're doing a really good job with your kids, and you're also being recognized professionally too. You've been recognized, I don't want to say it wrong, as a super lawyer?
Super lawyers, yes.
Yes. So you're a rising star with super lawyers since 2014. So every year since then, you've been doing great with as a rising star with them and their program. And now your own professional development has gotten you into more of a political realm, right? So let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh, it's crazy. So I would have never, you've known me again for forever. There's nothing in me. It's weird because people have known me, like, this makes so much sense. I don't think that there was anything in me that told me I was ever going to be seeking office. Like, this is not run one. But there is something, this community is my community. This is this neighborhood raised me. And I just made a joke yesterday about how now they're helping raise my kids and spoil them at the same time. Like, I didn't get spoiled. I definitely got the amount of assistance, but for, to have like 100 grandmothers and aunties that just come out of nowhere, like, whatever she wants, don't say anything. Stephanie, you have no words. She wants. My now 10-year-old takes full advantage of that. Like, nope, uncle said this, aunt said this, and it's like, you're not getting away. But it's beautiful because this community means so much to me. And when you talk about, like, parents and people just being present, right? Like, knowing what's going on. I'm an attorney because I had someone who cared enough to say, you're taking SATs tomorrow morning. No, I'm not. Who's taking SATs, right? Like, I went to alternative school my last year of high school. I graduated with those who attended night school at Madison Park High. I don't know if people even remember that. But that was my path. I wasn't really in school. I had a lot going on, and school was an optional course. It wasn't a mandatory in my life. But she showed up and gave me Sean's mom. She showed up, Miss B, love her to pieces. She showed up at my house with a check and some pencils and was like, you're going to go take SATs right now. And that's what propelled me to even think about school. But running for office, I'm running for state rep, is because this district, it's been everything to me. I'm like the daughter of this district. There's not a lot of places. I don't think there's any place you can go in this whole district and be like, Stephanie? And they're like, no, I don't know who that is. Like, everyone knows. Like, she comes to my house. She's like eating my food. Her and her friends used to hang out here growing up. And so when this opportunity came up, I really tried not to take it on. I was like, I've run before, wasn't successful. I'm doing the lawyering thing, which has been great, mainly because I am reaching out to young people and getting them to understand that there is a different path. I didn't travel this great. I wasn't a valedictorian. I didn't graduate the dean's list from college. Like, there was challenges, and I was a teen mom, right? So it was good to be in this place where people can see that these moments don't define you, right? Like, because if my moments define me, I don't know if you and I would be talking right now. I don't even know where I would be. But I didn't let my moments define me. I try to make other people's moments not define me. And when it came, and I get that from this district, right? This district is like one where we've gone through changes. So I was walking earlier doing lit drops, and I had people from around, who grew up with that came out to lit drop. And they're like, this neighborhood looks different from when you used to work down the street at Stock Market, right? Like, it is. It's completely different. I'm blessed to be in this space, but we have to get involved. We can't keep, it's not okay that I keep having these conversations, right? Like, I would love it if I have a grandson, our oldest is 31. We had our first grandson in November. I would love it if his mother did not have to explain to him what you should do if you're pulled over, right? Yeah. And I would love it if racism was a thing that's taught in history classes and not actually going on. But how
That's
do
right.
we get there? We have to get involved, right? You have to vote. I think one of the things that we do great is telling our young kids and ourselves, reminders, you have to vote, you have to vote.
Yeah.
The thing that we also forget to tell people is you have to stay involved, right?
That's
it's
right.
not enough to
Now,
get
with the voting, I want to stop you right there because we talked before about this a little bit. With the voting itself, that process, why don't you explain to our younger ones or people that may not be registered to vote yet what the process of voting is, why votes are so important? Because we hear the messaging all the time. I'm sure the listeners do too, like, oh, you have to vote, get out and vote, get involved. And then you hear the people that have kind of gotten a little bit, my vote doesn't count. It doesn't matter. They feel like that. So tell us about the process of voting, why it matters, why each individual person's vote counts and it matters, and why it's so important for us to get out there and vote.
So voting is actually your voice. It's your voice. Either you're putting in a computer. In Boston, we still circle in a bubble. It's your way of saying, this is who I want to represent me. So voting to me is such a big, powerful thing that it's like 4 letters that are so powerful and define who you are. So I am part of my ward committee, and every place in Boston is part of a ward in a precinct. So I'm a part of Ward 17. We're the ones that talk all the time. We get behind candidates. But more importantly, for, say, the governor's race, you'll have 4,000 people who want to run. We're going to go to our caucus that happens the same, every year. And we're going to vote some people in, and we're going to go to our state convention. And we're going to vote to see who actually is going to be our Democratic nominee. So you know what I do in that very moment? I take your voice away. That's my first time taking your voice away. Because you didn't come to caucus. You didn't try to get your name put in there. And so I go, and depending on who the candidate is, you have to get a certain percentage in order to make the ballot. That you could have been running for 7-8 months. If you don't get enough votes at this convention, you don't make the ballot, right? So step 1, that's the first time I take your voice away. And when I heard that, I was like, who are you to take my voice away? We fought for this, right? So I have an obligation to be there. So this is what I mean when I was saying earlier, you should stay involved, right? Voting, so when you're voting for someone, you're looking at that. You don't always agree with your significant other. You don't always agree with your kids or your family members. But more likely than not, they're going to do everything that you want. That's the candidate you want. They're going to do things that are going to make you, your family better, the school system better. Make sure there's money for youth violence prevention funding through youth jobs, or, dealing with the defunding of police or reallocation of funding with police. Those are the people, those are the voices that are in that room. In Massachusetts, we have 200 state legislators. So 40 of them are senators, 160 are state representatives, right? So you want to make sure that whoever is in that room of 200 actually is speaking for you.
Right.
And when you don't do that, you hurt yourself. So for those who, I would say this, 1, if education means something to you and you've sat home for the last 3-4 months educating your children, or you feel like me and you have a son who's still doing extended year, so you're still educating and they're in this Zoom, but you still have to be on them, know that your state legislators are deciding how that stuff is working. They're deciding the resources and money along with your school, your local school system, but you have to have a say in that. For those who say my vote doesn't matter, you should look up Julia Mejia, who won by 1 vote in the city council. 1 vote. 1 person decided to vote that may not have decided to vote, and it would have been a problem. She won by 1 vote. So that's enough to tell you what that is. When people talk about Obama, so I'm going to go back because he's still our forever president. But you'll also get people who are like, he was so ineffective, he didn't do what he wanted him to do. Well, that's because we poured in 2008. We ran to the polls. Everybody was Obama, 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 and then we started voting. So when the midterms came in and the House flipped, so that was majority Republican, everything he was trying to do was being stalled. He left not being able to appoint someone to the SJC because they were stalling him at every step of the way. We have to stay involved. You can't vote once a year, once every 4 years. You can't vote. You vote twice a year. You have to vote in your primaries. So the primary is, for me, is September 1. The primary is we have 3 Democratic candidates. It could be 3 Republicans, whatever it is. You have to come down to 1. So that first vote, right? So this is where your voice is loud. I want this person to be my nominee for my Democratic or my Republican nominee for state rep. If you don't show up, everyone else gets to decide who that nominee is. Okay. And so in our election, it's only there's 3 Democrats in. So only one person will move over to the November, which we don't have a challenger for. So that person will be your state rep. If you don't like them, you're stuck with them for 2 years. Your taxes are going to pay their salary for 2 years. And then what are you going to do? Because once they're an incumbent, especially in this state, it's hard to get them out. You have to fight really hard to get them out. Why fight a fight that you don't have to fight when you can proactively just spend 5 minutes circling in a bubble, right? And really getting to know who you're voting for. So voting is going to dictate how much money your schools are going to get. It's going to dictate, if there's any law changes. Perfect example of that everyone knows about is like the driving under influence in Massachusetts, like OUI, operating under influence. That used to be called Melanie's Law. There was a young girl who was killed by someone who had been arrested multiple times for drunk driving. Family went and they changed the law. That law impacts you. Why doesn't it? Like, so if you get pulled over and you're charged, it doesn't matter if you don't take your breathalyzer, you lose your license for 6 months, right? Like, so that's the time you can't stand in front of the police and be like, no, I'm not telling you anything. I'm not doing anything. If your job relies on that, right? So that came out of legislators who were moved by an emotional story. Rightfully so. There was a lot of things that were going on with drunk drivers. But that's like one important piece of legislation that people don't get. The same thing with driving school, requiring kids who are a certain age to go to driving school. Not a fan of that. It came out some years ago. I wasn't a fan of that because I think it negated the inequities in our households, right? So at the same time, they said that you have to, if you're 16, 17, you want to get your license, you have to do driver's ed. There was also like these small spikes in prices for driver's ed. And so our families, if we're trying to create a space of independence, and we can't, our parents may be someone with disabilities and cannot get that license. We can't, how does a family pay $700 for a driver's ed course, right? Where before, when we got our license, all we did was go down to the registry and take, the exam, and then you could book the same day your road test, do it the next day. You did not have to wait and go through this process. So that's a burden. But those are like just small things that we need to change. When we talk of, in current times, it's the reallocation of funding of the police. All for it. But what do you want the money to go to? It's not enough to say defund the police, because then it just goes back into the city or the state's budget, and it gets reallocated through them. But if you say, I want the money to be reallocated to small minority contractors and small businesses, minority-owned businesses, specifically creating a capital fund, right? So that if you want to bid on local and state projects, there's money in there that you can tap into in order to help you get your capital to be effective and start really getting some of the benefits of state and local contracts. So really being specific and intentional, but that's not going to just come. It has to come through legislation. And it starts with your vote. Who do you have in there who's going to do these things? Who's going to think about you when they're making decisions about things that impact our household? And in Boston, the Black households have a wealth of $8. $8. So if I have a wealth of $8, it means I have no disposable income across the board, right, collectively. So I may be doing well in my household. My neighbor may be doing well in their household. But there are so many of us that are doing doing lower than what not they want to do, but they're allowed to do in some situations, that our collective wealth is $8. That's a problem, right? And so whoever you vote for, they're going to have to address that through changing a lot of these issues, making sure that there's funding. You can't throw money at everything, but you can start creating programs. You can start paying attention to what's going on And reallocation of funding is the first step. Some policy changes, some mandatory training. Those are things that we can start doing. And not just the police. I think you're going to have to change a lot of people's perspectives. We all got emails. Like there was no, if you bought a pair of shoes in 2010, you got an email about that Black Lives Matter statement this, the last 2 months. But for me, it was like, great, I'm glad you're making a statement, but tell me what your board looks like. Did you change that? Yeah. Tell me what, if you're an elected official, tell me what your cabinet looks like. What did you do to, level out this playing field? Because your statement is a statement, but that's what your elected officials are for. They're the ones who are going to be the ones who are going to hold your feet to the fire. So voting is beyond important. Knowing who you're voting for, being involved, because they do impact you. It may not impact you directly, but it can impact your neighbor or your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, and you should be involved. You want to know what's going on. You don't want to wait till something bad happens and be like, what do you mean this past last year? This is hurting this family. Well, yeah, because you didn't vote and this person got in and they don't really care about that issue. So they didn't, they actually didn't even vote on it. They weren't even there that day to make a statement about it. Those things are going to matter. Yeah.
Everyone that's listening, I hope that you are taking all of this in and the importance of being able to get out there and vote and getting your vote into, how votes even become law too. There's a process to it all, but you have to stay involved. You have to understand who these candidates are, what they represent, what things that they agree with. And if it's in line with what works for you and your family, then you should go out there and vote for that person. Especially if it aligns with your goals for your family, things like that. Stephanie has done so many tremendous things. And I think it, before we get going, I think one of the things that I want to note so much is that not only did she get to go to school or motivate, have enough support in her community to go to college and become an attorney, and now is working towards becoming a state representative. She came from extremely humble beginnings, and I think that that's one point that I want to let the viewers know, just because, most of the people that we talk to come from extremely humble beginnings and they're doing great things, but we didn't really talk about your background as much as I do with other people because you just had so much going on. I had to start at a midpoint with you. But I do think it's really important to note that, because people that are looking at you may see you as this accomplished Black woman and feel like you're unattainable or untouchable, right? And I think it's really important for them to recognize you are, although you're successful, you're still a regular Black girl, and you're a Black mom, and you're a wife, and you care about your family, and you care about your community, and you came from something that allowed you to care for that, which was very humble. It's not, there were no silver spoons in the house, right? It was work. It was a lot of hard work. So I just want to encourage people that are listening or that even may be motivated by your story to know that no matter where it is that you came from, whatever your beginnings are, there is really no limit to what you want to accomplish in your life. If you set a goal to it and allow people that are trying to be supportive, because sometimes, God works sometimes really small, like your neighbor coming and paying for your SAT. You could have brushed her off too, but you decided you allowed her to motivate you. You gave her that, because people sometimes get those things and they'll still be like, nah, she gave it to me, but I only had an hour to get there. The people will excuse themselves if they don't want to do it. So something sparked inside of you, that we want to see that happen with all our youth, and so as adults, as mentors, as educators, as professionals, we want to make sure that it's not just our personal children that we should be out here helping and assisting and guiding. If we see children in general, right? I was in the store the other day and this white guy came in and he was being a little disrespectful. I have a pretty quick temper. I'm trying to simmer it down, right? So I felt myself getting upset, and all I kept saying is, this dude's gonna make me go to jail, right? Because I was gonna say something to him. But then the Spanish kid came in, and I never saw the kid in my life, and he rashed off on the guy. It was telling him how dare you be so disrespectful? Who do you think you are? And blah, blah, blah. And he held the door for me and let me walk out of the thing. And it gave me such a strong sense of pride. And like I said, I didn't even know the guy, but I'm hearing more and more stories like this, where it's I wasn't just going to let him deal with her like this. So I wasn't going to just watch this happen. And for what I believe a group of individuals that seem to be, in my opinion, the most underserved, the most underprotected Black women, right? For men to start stepping up into that, nah, you're not going to be that way to her. You're not going to talk to her like that.
Yeah.
I'm loving that. Can I just say that, that I love that? I don't think that it was ever talked about as much, how much we weren't protected, how much people didn't have our backs. Not even our own women. Black women don't got our backs, right? We're funny towards each other. Then Black men can be disrespectful because there are certain women that disrespect themselves and think that and allow other people to feel like it's tolerable, right? So there's a whole dynamic within us too that we have to be sorting through,
No.
And I think it's really important to have the conversations, but it takes women that are strong, women that are willing to say no, that have love, right? Because I feel like the love is what gives us the balance. Sometimes when you feel like, oh, I'm so strong and I don't need and no one can do and no one helped me and, it gives you a different kind of thing. But when there's love, then there's that balance of, no, I can share this, I can give this back because now I have it and I understand how it came to me. I think that changes people's perspective, about things is to build up that love in their hearts.
I think that so there's a few things, right? Like, so you have to be, and I try to be in my own life, very purposeful and deliberate, right? So I just told my daughter this the other day. She's 24, she'll be 25 soon, and she went through a little something, and I was like, I need you to draw a circle and put your name in the middle of it. And then I want you to draw a line, like, the solar system. I want you to define who you are. Because that's one that's important, right? Like, we should really encourage our young people to define who they are and not define them for them. As a parent, it's very hard not to define my children because it's like, I gave birth to you, I watched you grow, I poured this into you. But who they are and who they become is their own person. So I gave her this little exercise of just drawing all that you are off of that circle. And then all of your friends who figure out where they fit into who you are, right? Like, so if you are someone who loves dancing, put that person there. But if you don't see them at like career oriented or driven in a certain way, one of your things, don't bring them. That's not who you call when you go through something, because that's not where they are. We as women have to really do that type of love and soul searching. I remember being at a women's conference they have here in Boston some years ago, over a decade ago, and there was an author of this book, and I can't tell you the name of it right now, but I'll never forget her saying, there are different type of women in your life. You'll have women, if you're in the hole, who will jump down in the hole with you, and they're like, it's okay, the world is so cruel, what do you need? And they're going to sit right next to you. And they're going to stay in that hole until you're ready to come out. And then you have the friends who are going to throw a rope down in the hole and say, get out, and then we can talk, right? Yeah. Let's figure out what's going to happen next. And she's saying this, and for me, I'm like, I'm identifying who I am in my friendships. I am definitely, I'm going to throw a rope in. I don't, right? Like, and it's not a mean thing. It is who I am. And I had to learn to be okay with that. And the reason why I say that is that if you look at yourself as a box, right? Like, if you just took a pretty box and everything about you, like you were saying, like, where you from? Like, a dad who spent 90% of my life in jail, a stepfather who had in his own battles with substance abuse, his own demons, a mother who has mental health, right? You throw that in. You're throwing, you find it's up and down and around me every day, all day. Throwing not having, strong self-worth, homelessness, having a child at 19, like dealing with my own domestic violence. You throw that all in a box, right? And then you throw in all the great stuff too. Going, being able to graduate, having a community that loves me enough that made sure that I was successful. You throw in being married, great husband, and all these children. I could throw all that in. That's my box. It is. Yeah. It's my box. I love you, Monet, but I can't take your box and shove it into my box. And what we try to do, especially women, when we're in need and we're like, I want you to be there for me, we're like, I'm going to take my box and I'm going to pour it into your box that's already overflowing. In some way, somehow, I need you to deal with me at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? And it becomes overwhelming. So I was a person who would just like, okay, I have a corner in this side of my box. Pour yourself in over here. I have a corner over here, pour yourself in over here. And those corners are actually you, right? That's your me time. That's when you get to develop who you are, because as a parent, you start to lose a lot of that. As an employer and employee, you lose some of those things.
Sure.
But you now have filled them up with other people, and then you realize that your box is overflowing, but the box that pushed itself in is still intact. So you poured enough into them that their box didn't break, but you're breaking. So like you were saying earlier, I need help. It's because your box is breaking, and they've helped break your box before. So you're like, I need you to come back and help me. But they don't know how because you've never allowed them. So for me, I always tell people, like this I was telling my daughters, because I want her to know those are the boxes that your friends exist in, right? They can be next to you. They can grow. They can go on top of you, beside you. At any given point, you may be on top. They may be you may be side to side, but you all are never to be inside of the box together. You have to remain separate, but you also have to know how to support, because there are times where I'm going to need 15 boxes to stand behind because my walls are bust open.
Right.
I need all of y'all to put your effort together, embrace me, and keep me in. That's a parent gave me a check and some pencils to take your SATs. There were no boxes. They created one, right? And so what I have to do now that I have a semi-solid box, whatever it is, it's my job to go stand next to or stand under someone and build them up, right? So it's not enough to have your boxes and your sides all nicely, neatly put together by others. You do have to help out, but you also have to be protective, not to put so much into your box that you lose self. I think that you'll hear someone say, I did this by myself, mainly because they probably had their boxes ripped open a lot, right? And no one ever came back to pull them in.
And help them out.
We need to be clear about who we are, first and foremost, by defining who we are, defining where you can have the best of friends. They are not going to be in every sub bubble of you. They're just not. Right? And it's okay. But as women, I think we have this idea, we watch Wait Until It Hail, and everybody's in every part of their life. That's not true, right? Not every woman is going to want to, no matter how close you are, they'll hear your story, but they're not going to come sit on your couch and listen to you cry about your 15th breakup, right? They're not going to want to talk to you about the failures at your job because they may not understand it themselves, so they're just waiting for you to figure it out. Doesn't mean they love you any less. And we should stop making people feel like that, because their box is saying, they're telling you, this is what my box allows. My box allows for me to stand next to you. Sometimes you can stand on top of me so that I know you can lift up, but please don't expect yourself to come into my box. So we need to be respectful of that. And we have to, as Black women, really get to that point. We have been defined by music. We have been defined by having children young. We're defined by all these things that are not us. We walk, I tell my girls, I have my first 3 children were girls. And I always told them, you were born with 2 negatives, right? Societal negative, not my negative, but you're Black and you're a woman. Yeah. My job as your mother is to make those things, to flip it so that they're very positive and strong things. That's my job. That's my only job. And so no matter how old my daughters get, I'm constantly giving them those same tools of how do you become the strong person? Because when you walk in a room as a Black woman, right, the white guy that probably said something to you the other day, it's like, you're Black, you're ignorant. You're Black and you're a woman, so you're aggressive. You're ignorant. You don't know, you probably had a whole bunch of kids, you're living on welfare. Like every negative stereotype about a Black woman, enter that door before you did.
That's right.
Just a glimpse of you. So that when they start to talk to us, and that guy specifically, he's talking to a stereotype of you. He has no idea who you are. He has no idea what greatness comes from you. He just knows what he's seen. And that's the thing as Black women that we have to, overcome a lot. Black men have to overcome being, so it feels like they're scary, right? But for Black women, I feel like having been in the professional world, in a professional setting, Black men have a little bit better than we do. They put on suits. They don't, the biggest thing about Black men is not, they're not intelligent. Is that they feel like they're going to steal or do,
Right. They're violent, do something
in a professional setting, their suits kind of take away that they must be smart because they're working here, right? When we walk in with our suits, it's like, oh God, she's going to yell and scream. She's going to be ghetto. It's like automatically, it's something. I've been in so many meetings where I've let people run their mouths and tell me, oh, this law says this. They don't know who I am. They don't know what my background is. And it's not until the end that I tell them, you know, can you please send me the law that you kept referring to? Send me this. And then I hand them my business card and things change, right? Because before then, it's like, you're just a Black woman who doesn't know anything. I'm telling you, I'm going to teach you something today. And it's like, you're not teaching me anything. I know you're lying. But like, just keep going. And I've like, that's to me, my little superpower. I like for them to like make themselves look bad and then walk them through it. I mean, that's the criminal law. I mean, it's like, I'm going to let you say all the things that are wrong, and then I'm going to walk you through your lie. Like I've done my kids. Like I tell my kids all the time, please don't let me walk you through your lie. As a criminal attorney, when someone's on a stand, it's like if someone's lie, you're kind of you're walking them through this lie. But their attitude toward me changes substantially when you hand them your business card. Substantially. Like,
of course.
You know, but it's also
never mind how stupid they must be feeling on the inside. Now they have to now look at you as something that, you know, they wasn't hoping to see you as. No. They don't want to see you as educated. They don't want to see you as someone who is knowledgeable, so that it's so funny how completely dismissive a person can be in that way, where they don't even consider you, oh, she's not an attorney. You know, like she's too pretty. She's not smart. Like she's too, you know, like it's ridiculous. The amount of material.
I could tell you how many times I've gone to court and I've like gone to the clerk's office to figure out what courtroom I need to go to with a private client, and they'll say, "Who's your attorney?" What? I can't tell you how many times I've had that. I've been asked if I was the Spanish interpreter, which was like, okay. I've been yelled at in a courtroom by a court officer to tell me that repeatedly, that area is for attorneys only. Suit on, sitting next. I think I was talking, like literally, I've had someone yell across the room, "You're in the wrong areas for attorneys only." And then those who, even after I give my business card, the amazement of, "Oh, what law school did you go to? Why? Look it up." But it is. Like
it's so bad.
You have to, it's constant. It's a constant proving of who you are. Yeah. Even after giving a card, it's like, now, how smart are you really? What law school did you go to? Oh, what year did you graduate? Because, oh, you went to a good law school, but how long have you really been doing this for, right? Like there's these levels.
So for all the like Caucasian viewers right now, I want you to understand where some of that frustration may come from. You know, constantly being challenged based on the education that you had to bust your behind for and work so hard for. And then constantly people are doubting that or trying to discredit it, or, you know, that the level of frustration, even just the emotional, it's irritating, you know, every single day. Like at some point you would walk into the courtroom like, you don't remember my face? Don't we all look alike? Can't you just give me the benefit of the doubt and say I'm the same? You know, like it gets to that point where you almost want to be ignorant with them. Like, don't we all look alike? Like, I don't
want you to, it's not even about, to me, you remember my face. Everyone who walks in there is not a criminal. Everyone who walks in there is not an interpreter. Everyone who walks in there is not, I've been called a social worker too. I've been everything but the attorney, right? Like I am everything. And then your attorney, it's like, oh, when did you go to law school? Where have you been practicing at? There are all of these, and it's done in a way that, that makes it seem like they are just curious. But it really seems like I'm validating that you are actually good at what you do.
It's almost like they're trying to vet you because they want to give you a job or something that they don't actually want to give you. They're vetting you for no purpose. That's what they're doing.
Who are you really? And it's very hard, and it's hard for women of color to have to go into a courtroom and deal with this all the time. But we have to deal with it to then get to what we need to do for our clients, right? Like I know from my clients, the fact that I don't code switch. I'm Stephanie all day, every day. If you know me from in the 80s and 90s to Stephanie now, what people will say is, Stephanie, you haven't changed yet. I don't think at my age I'm going to change. It's just, you know, I've been pretty kind of solid. I've had my own moments of insecurities, but there are some things that were just my foundation that I won't change. But my clients rely on that, right? Like, so there are moments when you want to blow up, but it's like, you're not even worth it. It's like what you were saying about the guy, like going to jail. I always tell like there's no one I will go to jail for unless I gave birth to you, or like my 9 children, whether I gave birth to you or not, those are my kids, right? Like, you have to do something substantial to make me go to jail. And hurting them, and I mean not like, oh, you broke up with them, but like physically, some like off the that's I think regular parent stuff, regardless of race. Those are the only times that jail seems like an option for me. But we have to, like, just doing those mental checks. It is a lot of work of doing a mental check. Is this situation worth it? And I'm trying to get my clients to be the same way. Like, I get that you were upset, but let's talk about how this looks. There's a lot of counseling, right? But they listen to me more because I can tell them bits of my story. I can say, I had a client who got into a fight in jail, and he was someone that they couldn't get anyone to represent him. He wouldn't speak to anyone. So I went downstairs and I was like, do you want an attorney? Yes or no? He was in lockup. And he was like, yeah, it's fine. So I got all his information, told the judge I'm ready. It was like, we've called him in here 4 times. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't have time for it. Like, it was like, we're going to talk or we're not going to talk. If people can get that from you right off the bat. Right. And then when I went to go see him in jail, I'm reading over. And if you are from my neighborhood, there's some things you don't do. You don't enter anyone's house. They could be your family's house. You just don't walk in unless they have an open door policy. You don't just show up unexpected. These are things that are really grounded in us, right? And it's also protected in Constitution that you have a right to, privacy and to protect your home. That's how they do the whole fire, arms thing. So this guy had a problem with another gang member came into the jail, and the gang member came into his cell. And there was an altercation. I was like, oh, he entered your home. I get this, self-defense, he entered your home. And he was like, no one else could get that. And I was like, no, this is, when you're in jail, this is your home. This is your space. And so you have to make that. I was able to get it dismissed off a whole bunch of other things, but it was probably, most of it was really connecting with people and letting them understand that. So while I may not like the questions, and I'm never going to like the questions or how those things work, I think my clients seeing me handle it appropriately makes them respect me more, makes them
I agree.
More. And it also helps them when I'm saying you can be better, right? Because they're watching me be better. They're watching someone, what law school did you go to? What did you do with this? And you're boiling.
You're setting the example at the same time so they see it, right?
Yes, and it's very hard. And you do have those Trey Boys in the Hood moments when you come home and you're crying and you're punching the air because you're fighting against something that is it's greater than you. It's older than you, right? Like, these are things that surpass us, but you have to do them. Every day you just have to get out there and fight, and you just keep going. And everything I am is just every day, every moment, I'm just going to keep moving. Some moments are 2-3 years long. Some moments 2-3 minutes long, but I'm learning from them every day, fighting for them every day. And I don't, to the day I die, this is what I'm going to do. And
Stephanie Everett, Esquire, State Representative. Thank you so much.
Yes.
State Representative candidate. You're going to do great. You're going to do great. Everybody, you guys make sure that you go out and vote. Stephanie Everett, she's going to be on the ballot, right? Or you already are on the ballot.
We're on the ballot September 1.
September 1st. So you guys make sure you get out there and support Stephanie. She's an attorney, so she's helping out the community, but she's also from here as well, so she knows what we need and how to get it for us. So I hope that you guys take a minute to go out there and make sure that you acknowledge her and vote for her on September 1st. I want to thank you for staying tuned in to another episode of Engage, Motivate, and Elevate. I'm your host, Monet Fox, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, bye-bye.
It is now time to elevate.
Time to motivate them.
Let's engage. It is now time to elevate.